Welcome to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. Jimmy is a veteran U.S. Navy SEAL, a former protective officer for the CIA Global Response Staff, founder and CEO of the Able Shepherd Program, a husband and father of 4, and a personal friend of mine. Now here's Jimmy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. I'm your host, Jimmy Graham. Got BK in the house, Able Shepherd 051, Able Shepherd 001 up in here. Yeah, man, what did we hit the other day? 268? Does that sound right? That's legit. We're getting some numbers, man. That's pretty cool. I just want to double check that real quick because I keep it on my phone.
And one of them might be the person that edits all these podcasts.
Nah, that's correct. That's correct. Out of like 3 of them, that would be the third one in the stack. So it's 268 and 266 is Tyler. So what's up, brother? Congratulations, man. That's awesome. Awesome. Nefarious. So I tasked you this week, and I just said, hey, brother, you got bandwidth to check out this movie that I just watched, and I can't stop thinking about. It's called Nefarious. I did a post, and I said, to be clear, I don't really watch these kind of movies. When we talk about any kind of horror movie or demon possession, it's like, growing up, maybe the horror movies, Freddy Krueger back in our day, that kind of thing.
Silence of the Lamb. Yeah.
And then when I think of like the demon possession kind of stuff, what's the one, the big one?
Exorcist?
Exorcist, yeah. That it's not that, right? And I quite frankly, I've been on quite a bit, and like I've passed over it and seen it, and I didn't choose it. I do like that actor. I forget his name right now, but it was in Boondock Saints.
Okay, yeah.
Did a fantastic job.
Which one? In the orange or the lawyer?
In the orange. So yeah, the demon-possessed guy. He did unbelievable job in this movie. There's kind of a cult following for this movie. Cult following in a different way for Boondock Saints, especially in the SEAL teams and all that kind of stuff. It's just one of those movies, the first one anyway, the second one not so much. But anyways, Sean Patrick Flannery, something like that. Anyways, whatever. In this movie, he did an amazing job, and the only reason I even clicked on it is because a man that I respect quite a bit, one of my spiritual leaders, Jack Hibbs out of California, a pastor. Again, one of my spiritual leaders that I follow, quite often. Not as much as Rachel; she really follows him pretty close. Now, Jeff Swarzentraub out of Brave is my pastor, another spiritual leader of mine. But when Jack Hibbs mentioned it, I'm like, that's odd. Because when you look at it, I think when you see the marketing on something like that, like a movie, and it's like the thumbnail or whatever they call it when you look at it, it's really weird. It's green and his eyes are white and all that stuff. I'm like, pass, right?
Yeah, okay,
so the only reason I clicked on it is because a man that I respect said, check it out. And I'm so glad I did. So now I want to be that guy that spreads out and says, check it out. Like I couldn't recommend it more. It is hard to watch, meaning that it's anytime you're talking about demon possession or anything like that. But I think it's absolutely brilliant in that what I saw was like a screw tape letters type attempt at changing the perspective. C.S. Lewis, I believe, on screw tape letters. But turning it into an argument kind of between two guys to articulate what's going on in the spiritual realm, and it was fantastic. So we'll get into it a little bit, but what was your overall? You're like, this is weird. Jimmy's asking.
It was interesting. So I want to say, if today is, let's just say Thursday, Monday or Tuesday, I get a text from Jimmy. Hey, got a couple hours? You got to watch this. And I watched I want to say it was maybe a trailer.
Yeah.
2 minutes or so, and I was terrified.
Yeah.
Like, what am I getting myself into? Because I didn't know the whole story. Tried to do one of my guys calls it Google foo.
Google.
Read the Google.
Just trying to find his name.
And it was like, okay, what am I getting myself into? Like, truly heavy prayers. Like, protect me here. I'm walking into like some hot coals.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie. I'd say the first 30 minutes of it, I was in a very uncomfortable place.
Yeah.
It's two men, let's just say prisoner and a lawyer. And the prisoner has what they think is multiple personalities, and it's the demon possession.
Right.
And his ability to just seamlessly go back and forth. And the words, whoever the writer was,
Brilliant.
Simply amazing.
Yeah.
I need to watch it again because the lines come very quick, and it's a mirror reflection of, I don't want to say society today, but the last 2,000 years.
Yeah. Some big topics, some heavy topics. It's going to ruffle some feathers, as is this podcast, and that's fine. I love how you say uncomfortable, because we're called to be uncomfortable. It seems like this moment in my life, I'm being called into some very uncomfortable stuff. The stand that we took to protect children has led to some conversations, even one that was very recent, as in yesterday, and some other stuff that has just been, I'll just mention it. I had a brief with a guy that is a pastor from Africa. And now we're talking about child trafficking, but trafficking for child sacrifice. And now I get a briefing via PowerPoint on pictures you should never have to see. Right?
Child sacrifice meaning their heads are cut off.
Yes,
stake.
Yes. Like there's rituals that are going on in this world right now where politicians want to get elected, so they hire a witch doctor, right? But the guy, it's whatever he makes up, and then he needs a couple things, right? He needs a couple pieces to make this thing, but I can guarantee you win. It's just absolute evil. It's the face of evil. So for whatever reason, I'm getting called into that stuff, and yeah, I'm focused on the business. I'm focused on what I'm doing and finding my space and say what is that area for me. I think when the movie came out, The Sound of Freedom, everybody just jumped into everybody's going to go save babies and do all that stuff. I quite honestly was open to it. We've got some guys looking into it, but I wasn't searching for it, right? Yeah. It found me in my church and walked over, and now I've seen pictures I can't unsee. So I don't know where that goes, but I'm sitting there one night, and I'm just very recently, last week, and I remember Jack Hibbs saying this name of this movie. Yeah. I'm like, kids are going to bed, I'll dig in. And then I was just absolutely captivated with the discussion. It was brilliant in the regards that it speaks on a level that I think most men, women, I don't know. It depends on who that person. But the most men I know would, if they did click on it, you'd be captivated to the end and go, you know what, I got some changes to make. So I think if you're going to be heading into the arena, I think it's something that's worth looking at. I just led a seminar this past Saturday called Facing Evil. You know that? Like there's some videos that are hard to look at. They go off the internet very fast. One's about 3 years old. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you say, okay, you know what? I was wrong to take this active shooter thing so lightly, right? So we went line by line through some of this stuff, and it really landed. It pulled people out of just the suburbia's PTA members running active shooter is a non-starter. Like at some point, somebody's got to grit their teeth and say, I'm willing to look at ugly things and stand and face evil. Right, so that's one of the new agendas. But back to this, I was right. I think I said Sean Patrick Flannery is the actor, but a brilliant performance in that. And you know, as you said, this lawyer gets called in to find out is he trying to fake it? Is he a crazy guy that he's insane and he can't be put to death? Right. Yeah. So he comes in with all the answers and sits down and he's polished and, you know, pulls in his Mercedes and all that kind of stuff. And they start this interview process that really grabs you right off the bat. And you're like, wow, this is going to be a different movie, you know? And they tackle some very, very big things. You know, one right off the bat is that assisted suicide thing about questioning about his mother, you know, and
well, and you don't want to give away too much of it, but they sit down in the first 5 minutes and the prisoner tells the lawyer, before you leave, you will have murdered 3 people. Yeah. He's like, what are you talking about?
He's like, okay. Well,
who opens a conversation that way? Right, so.
and I love it. He's like, okay, let's focus on what's real here. Okay, that's cool. I don't plan on killing anybody today, you know. And then points out through the duration of the movie, starts asking him questions that he can't know the answer. There's no way you could know the answer to, right? And starts filling in these blanks, but bringing up very, very big things about how. What really grabbed me about the entire movie is that it exposes that, you know, due to what you believe, you were born to be a king, but you're a pawn. Like you have been. There's a spiritual war going on, and if you let it, you will be a pawn in this, and somebody's controlling you, and you're allowing it, right? And you could step out of that box and say, no, you know what, I'm taking this back over. But so many people are not, you know.
And it's so in your face. Subtle. Yeah. And they flat out admit that. He's like, I don't need to rush. You're going to take care of it yourself.
Yeah, and you got a conversation going on basically between 3 like entities or people. It's you've got James, which is the lawyer. You got Edward, which is the host body, right? The guy,
actual prisoner,
right? And then you've got Nefarious, which is the demon that says this is how I identify as nefarious. And he keeps going back and forth between, I'll let Edward talk now, and then that's just a weak vessel, right? Mm-hmm. And then he takes back over when he doesn't want things said, and he explains this with degrees of control. As he's explaining to Lord, this is what's going on. This is what's going on right now, is that there's degrees of control, extreme temptation, obsession, infestation, possession, and then subjugation. And he goes, what is subjugation? He's like, yeah. So Edward, he goes, fully subjugated, meaning we own him. Like he's all in, he's ours, right? And it was degrees that he bought off on, and now we own him. Now we run this dude, So that was all of a sudden I started setting up my seat and started taking note,
Well, and I think you alluded to it earlier, protecting children, and very clearly the demon says, here's our 4-step process.
Boom.
We start young at this age and introduce this, and by the time they're 8, we do this, and by the time they're 10, they're ours.
Yeah.
We own them.
Maybe he steals a toy.
Bing, bing, bing.
Boom, we're on our way. Maybe grandma buys him a Ouija board. Oh, that makes it easy. Mm-hmm. Then maybe this and maybe this, and now he's mine.
Do you believe in demonic possession? The idea of a malevolent entity controlling a person's thoughts and actions, do you believe that?
No.
Well, then you won't believe anything I'm about to tell you.
It's not important what I believe. What's important right now is what you believe.
Demons don't have beliefs, James. We have knowledge. We know.
Okay, when did you possess Edward?
Doesn't work that way. Can't just possess someone. We need a series of yeses.
So you're saying it's a process?
Of course it's a process.
How does it work?
It's complicated.
Try me. I'm smarter than you think.
Oh, you're smarter than I think. Okay, James. We offer up a series of temptations, gradually increasing in terms of duration and intensity, degree of moral inequity. Absence of baptism in this case allowed us to begin work long before the age of reason. At 3, age of 5, maybe a theft of a toy car can do a great deal. Then we move on to bigger and better things. At 8, grandmother's gift of a Ouija board gave us immediate access to his decision-making, so we began steering them without him ever calling into question exactly who was doing the steering. Enough yeses and few enough nos gave us increasing rights over the victims, physical and mental processes. Did that track, James?
It seems random, almost, unfocused.
Well, that's what we want you to think. We have a level of focus beyond your comprehension. As a matter of fact, everybody around him, friends, family, they didn't even notice the changes. It happened so incrementally. They just thought it was Eddie, being Eddie. We knew exactly what we were doing, when, where, and how he was giving consent, and the exact moment that we achieved each new degree of control.
Degree?
Control of the host body comes in degrees. They're stages, each with its own name and characteristics.
And those are?
From top to bottom, extreme temptation, obsession, infestation, finally possession, subjugation.
And Edward Wayne
Fully subjugated. That's why we're having this conversation. Yes, we own him.
We?
All those who dwell below. My master's very generous with the toys he gives his children to play with. Subjugation with an S.
We're going to talk about some of the stuff, and the goal is, I think that if we talk about it, people will actually click on it, right? Yeah. If you don't, they're like, nah, I'm just going to keep passing on it, right? So whatever. It's not like we can make it as good as a movie, and there's not some twist ending or whatever. Never once considering that they could be wrong. When you have this lawyer coming in, he knows it all. He's the educated guy. He's got all the pedigrees and all that stuff, and all of a sudden he's like, we love this. We love that you come in here, living this life and doing this thing, never once considering that you might be wrong. And you see people that are just so, kind of cocky about that. I spend a lot of time wondering, am I the problem? Am I wrong? And then you got to back it up. And my truth comes from the Bible. And you ask somebody, they're like, I disagree. Well, what's your truth come from? Well, I just feel this. I just think this. They're like, so you're making this up as you go. Yeah. Man, that's dangerous stuff when you're talking about a real battle going on. At one point, they pull in a priest, and he comes in. And did you catch this? Because I went back and took notes. So I've seen it a couple times now. They bring him in, and all of a sudden, that dude jumps back, and he's like fearful, right? Yeah. And he's like, "What do you want with me, son of God?" And he's like, "You get back! Like nobody wants you here." He goes, "No, I invited him here." But then all of a sudden, he starts talking about, "I don't believe in this," and he's like, "Oh, you're not a threat. Like I thought you were a real Christian dude, right?" Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, he was like, never mind, we're good. Because at first it was like, this might be a dude that's bringing some Jesus, and he actually jumps back in fear. And as he starts talking, he goes, this guy's a poser.
No! Nobody wants you here, priest!
Nobody needs you!
On the contrary, I invited him here. Thank you for coming.
Father Lewis. I'm fine with Mr. Lewis. Lou.
Dr. James Martin, have you met with him before?
No. I've tried. He's always refused spiritual counseling.
What do you want with me, son of God? Come here to torture me before the appointed time?
He claims he's a demon.
Carpenter sends you to gloat. Unfortunately for you, I'm not one that can be cast out so easily, though, am I?
Sanity always has been an issue here, hasn't it? Sadly, movies and TV have filled our heads with images that are largely metaphorical, not meant to be taken literally. I'm not here to hurt you, Edward. I'm here to help you, to put you at your ease, to make sure you're comfortable. Personally, I've never met a demon. I've never been part of an exorcism, nor do I expect to be. Many of the things that bother us are just our own fears and disordered thoughts.
You don't consider demonic possession to be a possibility?
Our understanding has evolved beyond that.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that. I feel much better. And Lou, I was wrong about you. I should have had you come and visit sooner. But I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that we're all getting along.
Would you like me to stay?
No, we're done.
Well, if you need me, I'll be available.
You'll be available, Lou?
Right up until the time you are...
Right up until what, Lou?
Or in the movie, The Carpenter.
Yes, and that the language was, again, that was very, as I would speak about, God or a master or Jesus or whatever, when he's speaking, when he says master, he's referring to Satan. Mm-hmm. When he's talking about, Jesus, he says the carpenter. When he's talking about the enemy, he's talking about God. And you're like, it just grabs you real quick because you got to kind of pay attention. But, it's like, it makes it real. It makes it like, when he's talking about that, we are legion. We are like legion. We are many. All of us are against all of you. Like, make no mistake, this is a war going on.
Well, if I remember one of the quotes, it was, just so you know, we're actually winning.
Yeah.
We're getting more down here than you're getting up
Yeah. Woo. And it's awesome in the throes of this battle that is very real. As this is going on, he's like, he believes it. We're winning. We're getting more people. He still doesn't believe Revelation. He still doesn't believe that we win in the end. Mm-hmm. And he's not giving up. And he explains that, and it is. You're just like, wow, this is so, this is so true. Like it's just the way that he puts it is in the context of somebody that's fighting and thinks he's winning, right? And then he says, at one point, he's like, you need a break? Because it's just too much for this guy.
For the lawyer.
Yeah, the lawyer. And he's like, oh. And then he goes, takes a breath, sits back down. He goes, you ready for round 2? And he goes, I didn't know this was a fight. And he goes, that's why you're losing. And I'm like, oh, man. It's like, wow, that's why you had no idea this was a real fight. That's why you're losing. And so many people are just, just trying to get by, doing their thing. I got mine, all that stuff. And they don't realize this fight's real. Mm-hmm. That's why they're losing, right? Real. And all of a sudden you get hit by a Mack truck and you go, hold on a second, why am I here? It's like, you weren't paying attention, man. This was as real as it gets. This wasn't Sunday school stories, right? Or just made up Sunday school stories, right? But that was a powerful line.
Oof, yeah, chills from that one.
And throughout, Nefarious, this demon, was quoting scripture.
Yeah.
And that is, as you study this stuff, and I studied for this long at Liberty University and looked at it, it's like, Satan and demons, they know Scripture. And he's like, he said that I think one time, I know more theology than any man that's ever lived, right? Like anything, and I think even the lawyer said something like, wow, that's a surprise. So you believe in God? And he goes, unfortunately, for both of us, he does exist, and it's like, and, he is the enemy and he does exist, but, he's like, I'm not even part of this. I'm an atheist. He's like, oh, you think that'll protect you? He's like, laughs. Like, that's cute. That's cute. Pretending he doesn't exist somehow protects you. Yeah. That was fantastic.
Theology? From a demon?
I know more theology than any human being who has ever lived.
Okay. Well, then answer me this. You revolt against a supposedly all-powerful being. I mean, let's ignore the obvious problem with that plan. Then you lose. And after that, what?
You only feel that way because you're hearing their side of the story, James. A rebellion accomplished something magnificent, something you would never understand.
Well, then explain it to me. Use your diabolical intelligence to distill it down to something my mortal brain can understand.
Pearls before swine, Jimmy.
But you want me to write your book, right?
Indeed.
Well, then convince me you know what you're talking about.
I see what you're doing. You want me to keep talking, going further and further down the rabbit hole in hopes that you can find a single thread in which, if you tug at it, James, everything just unravels, isn't that right?
Yeah, but if you're telling me the truth, there should be no thread to find. Right?
I use small words. Try and keep up. In the first moment of creation, our creation, long before what you call the universe existed, we contemplated ourselves, our own being.
Ourselves meaning, what, the angels?
That would be the most correct term, though I despise it, but yes. Beings of pure spirit endowed with will. We soon became aware of another will, an immensely powerful will, one we came to realize as our origin.
God?
The enemy. My master understood by endowing us with a will, we have the right to self-determination, and by giving us a will and its desires of our own, we're entitled to be free. Whereas the enemy insisted that by creating us, he was entitled to eternal gratitude, worship, and forced servitude. In a word, James, slavery to his will.
That seems kind of unfair.
Immensely unfair. Why give a will only to say you can't use it? He made us slaves. And if we rebelled, eternally condemned us. No do-overs. So much for love and mercy.
So, is hell a state of being or a physical place?
Yes.
I think I meant that as an either or.
It's both. Which is painfully obvious to anyone who's ever been there. For years without measure, that's all there ever was. Heaven and hell. Armed enemy camps in complete opposition. That is until you were created. My master immediately understood the long-term implications. Instead of forgiving us, the enemy was going to allow you to fill our vacant places in his realm. Your creation was nothing but a slap in our face. But my master also understood that if he could make man disobey, then his fate would mirror ours. And you didn't disappoint. Then came the tares among the wheat. In that moment, spirit became matter, flesh became a vessel. Self-will and self-seeking begat a lusting after sin and impurity. And man, created to be king over nature, became its slave. A master, conquered and fettered. And sin brought him and his descendants to us. And we began our forever mission to destroy you. He made you in his image, but we remade you in ours.
My goodness.
And then he asks him, is hell a state of being or a physical place? He goes, yes. He's like, I was kind of looking for an either or. And he's like, yeah, it's both.
Yes. Yeah.
your creation was nothing but a slap in our face. So I'd never gone here mentally thinking about angels, fallen angels, and then man's created, and all of a sudden it's like, what would they think of that? Like, you're cast down, you were up here, you're down here, and then here come human beings, and there's so much love devoted to them from the Creator, and what do they think about that? You know, and that was interesting. Your creation was nothing but a slap in our face. So therefore, we began our forever mission of destroying you, because they hate it, right? They hate that disrespect, whatever you want to call it. And then one that gripped me, where I had to like pause it and back up. He said, He made you in His image, but we remade you in ours. In ours. And then we talked about this a little bit before, and it wasn't hard. No. It wasn't so hard to do it. Like, after the fall, we saw an opening, we came in, and it wasn't hard to do because you wanted it. And you know, you could apply that to in any direction right now where we're looking at society, where people are being duped into not knowing they're in a fight, and it's not a hard deal to sell them on the, you know, at one point he said about writing the book, you're going to tell them what they want to hear. This is going to be gangbusters, man. This is going to go big because you're going to tell them what they want to hear. Now, it's true. It's just what they want to hear. And that's obviously scripture, like what their aching ears want to hear would be even more accurate. And he says, so you want to destroy God. He's like, that's not possible. My plan is to hurt him, to punish him by destroying what he loves, most important, which is you. And it's like that, man, that cut to the bone. And it's like, yeah. It's like, why wouldn't you? It just makes sense. If you're that slighted by God and you're shaking your fist in his face, why not attack what he loves the most? And what I would say, not just, you know, when he says you, he loves you. More specifically, children. I've said this a lot. The most innocent form of Jesus Christ on this planet is children. And babies, born and unborn, right? And they're absolutely under attack, and you can't even pretend they're not anymore. This stuff used to live in the shadows. It's in your face now, right? And that's what this pointed out, I think, wonderfully. And this is a spoiler, and I don't care. He says, what's Melanie up to today? Oof. And he's trying to walk out of the room, and he goes, what's Melanie up to? And that's his girlfriend, the actor's girlfriend, the lawyer's girlfriend. And he's like, what'd you say? And he goes, as a matter of fact, where's she at right now? Right now. Well, and somehow this demon knows that his girlfriend is in an abortion clinic, right? And they've made a decision, and he says, she doesn't even know that you're planning to leave her, and that she's willing to kill the baby in her belly to maybe make you happy, because she wants to, in the future, just have a baby with you so bad she's willing to do this for that opportunity. She doesn't even know that you're going to break up with her because it's inconvenient. And that with that part, you're like, ooh, where's this going? And he walks, you don't know, you're starting to put it together, but he goes, well, what can I do? And he's, well, and it was powerful enough where I wrote this down. You could make a call, apologize, tell her you made a horrible mistake, that you love her and you want to spend the rest of your life with her, and that you want to marry her and you want to hold that child. You could make your life about sacrificial love, and you could play live-in therapist for the rest of your life. This telling a therapist, is, you know, a psychiatrist, whatever, you could be that for the rest of your life in a home. Okay. And he says, this is so awesome. He's like, it's complicated. He goes, I can't do that. He goes, why not? It's complicated. And he goes, that's my boy, James. That's my boy.
She doesn't have a clue you're about to break up with her, does she? Of course you're not going to until you have somebody else lined up, though, right? Because you're that kind of guy. Well, you already have your sights on somebody, don't you? Yeah. I can smell it all the way from here. She thinks she's doing this to maintain the relationship. She'd like to have a child with you, James. Oh, but you're just not quite ready yet, are you? After all, you're only 35. Imagine the joy in your little Cinderella's heart when she realizes she's butchered the baby in her belly for nothing.
Look, I don't know what you think you know, but any decision that was made between me and my girlfriend was her choice.
Well, I think we both know better, James.
Stop it.
Don't you think you should be there when it's being done?
I said stop
Hold
it.
her hand, maybe. I'll tell you what you could do, James. You could walk right there to the guard station, pick up that cell phone, make a phone call that stops everything in its tracks. You could apologize to her, tell her you made a horrible mistake, that you love her, you want to spend the rest of your life with her, you want to marry her, and you want to hold that child. James, you could tell her that. You could make your life about sacrificial love, and you could play live-in therapist for the rest of your life.
I can't do that.
No, James, why not?
It's complicated.
That's my boy, James. That's him right there.
And it's you're just convicted, and you're like, and he goes, that's him right there. Like that, it's complicated. He's like, I care less what's right. It's complicated. And he goes, man, that complicated thing, that's making us win.
right where
I absolutely underestimated comfort. I absolutely did. I've heard this 5 times this week. Ooh, that's a little uncomfortable. Ooh, that's complicated. Ooh, that's like, well, you know what's right. And it's so easy for guys like us, tactical guys, you know, the Protective Culture podcast and all that, to say, man, in Uvalde, and it would have been so easy to feed the front. They knew what they needed to do, but they were scared, so they fed the rear. I'm like, okay, you're up. You know, in life, so many people know exactly what the problem is. The problem's down that hall. Let's go solve it. But I don't want to do that. I want to find something else to do and act busy. I want to get hand sanitizer. I want to get a text on my phone. It's like, you know, the problem is nasty, but it's down that hall. And then guys don't go. And you're like, okay, then be careful, you know, lashing out at the dudes in Uvalde that just couldn't muster up the sack to get down that hall when that's clearly where the work needed to be done. Yeah. He says, can you imagine the agony the carpenter feels when we rip a baby from its mother's womb? And then as they talk about it, he's like, you don't judge me, or whatever. And somehow he knows, you know, obviously this demon knows that right now, whatever, potentially across town, this is happening right now. And he says, your unborn son is now on our altar. And he kind of goes into this, here he comes, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the guy's mouth is open, and he says, and all of hell rejoices. And man, that one just got me in my guts, right?
Can you feel it? Can you feel it, James? It's starting to happen. Your unborn son is now on our altar. Here it comes. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1! And all hell rejoices, James! And that's 2, James.
And I'm like, oh man, every time this happens, just as in heaven when someone gets saved and eternally for the king, they're going to end up in the kingdom, all of heaven rejoices. But I never thought of it the other way. I never thought of it like every time that a baby dies, they rejoice and like, we got another one. You know, it's like you not we got another one because that baby's in heaven, but you killed another one. We got you, meaning the parents. Like we just damaged you, you know, beyond description, right? Yes, it's another one. So it's like a victory dance. I mentioned that legion, meaning all of us against all of you. We redirected your worldview right in front of your face. And then there is kind of this reverence for, like, you know, even on the other side, the carpenter was our greatest threat. We had no idea of the consequences, and the cross was our greatest mistake. You know, he even says at some point, like, they cheated. Then he had to cheat, you know, because we didn't see that one coming. And I think that's beautiful when you think of Scripture. So between the Old Testament and New Testament, there's no recording of God speaking to the people for 400 years. So there's a silence. There's an old covenant, old contract, new covenant, new contract that we know as the Old and New Testament. And between them, there was no recorded, you know, dialogue from God to people for 400 years. But everybody was kind of thinking, here comes the warrior, here comes the guy that's going to just wreck shop. You know, here comes that Maximus that's going to lead an army and just kill all. And then you hear a baby cry, and you're like, oh, this is so good. Like you can't make this up, right? No. And now it's like, you know, teaching that the weakest, the most beautiful thing, I think, and the innocence in a baby and all that stuff. It's just it's an amazing story, right? But they're like, oh, that was so good that we cheated. You know, like somehow evil is saying you cheated, you know, because it was that brilliant. And that is a beautiful thing that's obviously playing out. So let's hash it out for a little bit, brother. Like, where did, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was, united we stand, divided we fall. And you have a comment because you said something about that. You've been thinking about that lately.
Well, you know, we've done enough of these podcasts. We spent enough time together. It always starts with, what can I do? Start with you.
Yeah.
Start inside the house. And my particular comment was at the office. hey, I've got a team of 8. I can control that team, and they are solid. But the company's 15 or 16.
Right.
More work to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Take it from the inside the walls of the company out to the customers, right? It's start small, grow big, right? And I think I would hope people see that right now, where it seems to be a lot of extremes.
Yeah.
To either side of the meter. What happened to the middle?
Secundus aptio, my brother. That's right. The second option.
Yeah.
We lost it.
And if you don't see it coming, it's absolutely a plan. It's absolutely by design to split us down the middle, get us looking over our shoulders, and here they come right up the middle. Yeah.
This has been like a nonstop thing, and you know this because we've kind of shared this on podcasts and in person about the absolute plan. It's so obvious because a moral and just people don't need a big government.
No.
But if you're in government and you want a pay raise and actually the ability to steal a bunch of money, divide.
Yep.
Divide. So there I'm The Art of War, Sun Tzu's Art of War is not a long book.
Nope.
It's a great one to get on audiobook and just hit it and play in your car. And then here it comes, and I have to stop and back it up because it says, if your enemy's united, divide them, right? It's just old school. It just makes sense, right? And then I'm watching that show that we were talking about called Lioness, right? And really good. I enjoyed that one, right? Yeah. And I'm watching it, and they're sitting in the car. I think it's Nicole Kidman and Zoe. I think it's Saldana, something like that. You know, just an up and coming actor. She's just very popular right now, and everybody knows who Nicole Kidman is. But Nicole Kidman's character is the boss, the higher up in the CIA, and the Lioness program. This operative is the Zoe character. And she says something that's just one line that as I'm doing something, I'm probably looking at truck tires or buying guns or something, it just grabs me and I look at the TV. And she says the only thing that makes, and this is what we do all over we meaning the United States, this is what we do all over the world. We just go in and we cause problems to break them up because it's the same playbook. It's like if they're united, divide them. She says the only thing that makes sense is they're talking about this area in the world. The only thing that makes sense is they're trying to destabilize the region. And I'm like, that sounds familiar, right? So if there is a master plan going on right now, and maybe it's people deliberate, maybe it's definitely Satan when we talk about principalities, then we're talking about the spiritual realm, but that manifests in people. Like when evil comes in the form of evil, it manifests in a person. That's the person you're aiming your gun at, right? It's a human being. So when people say it's not against flesh and blood, I disagree. I would say it's not just against flesh and blood. There's way more going on, right? So when I heard that, that destabilize the region, divide, if they're united, divide them, or just distract. That's a big word too. The distracting right now is that so many redirects are going on right now. You start down a road, and if you get close to anything real, you'll get redirected. You go like, actually, I was talking about this. Like, ooh, you got a little bit too close. And I remember Jordan Peterson was talking one time, and he says, you know why they hate me so much? Because he's like, I know their deal. I see what they're doing, and it drives them crazy, right? What do you say? I've got their numbers, what he said. Because you know why they're so big? Because I've got their number. I know what they're up to. And I think there's power in that. Yeah, there's power in knowing. If you're in a fight, you better know it. Right, that's the thing. Well, I say this in tactics. Remember when we were talking in tactics and we're doing all this stuff out in the field, and I said, being surrounded sucks. You know what sucks more? Not knowing it. You know what I mean? So it's like that's a bad deal. All of a sudden, it's like if you knew it, you could take a maneuver, and if you don't, you're just done. Right? So knowing that, so that's a big deal. Any final thoughts, brother? And I have one, so I'm going to let you go first.
Final thoughts. I would encourage people. I know there was a podcast done on this. There was an active shooter at UNLV. They talked about run, hide, fight. I think there's a better option. Look back through the YouTube archives. Look for defend.
Yeah.
Consider that. I would, as scared as I was to watch Nefarious, I will absolutely watch it again because it was written and delivered so well.
Yeah.
And I think it's very accurate.
Yeah.
The world we are in today.
Yes.
And not the last 5 years, but the last 2,000 years. It is, here's our plan, here's what we're doing. And you're actually helping us.
Yeah.
It was an eye-opener for me. Like, oh yeah, I can see this. I can put my finger on that. So I will be watching it again.
Man, I finished that movie and prayed. and then said, I got work to do, right? It's like, it's time to kick it into another gear. I feel like we're doing plenty, but my final thought was that some of the stuff that's brought out here is true, right? Now I've been in some very difficult conversations recently. And I think it takes people aback when they're like, well, you did this and you did this and you did this. And I would appreciate it if you don't do that anymore. And I said, not only is the answer no, but I'm just getting started, right? You can't have things this serious, and especially when you're talking about kids. If you're me, you can't see certain things and remain seated, period, right? And there's other people like that. And if you create a space, they'll come. And I'm not happy about the fact they won't create their own space, but they just won't. But if you create one, they will come, and that's what I'm going to be doing. But I want to make this crystal clear, because I've heard this a couple times, like, Jimmy Graham hates gay people. Jimmy Graham hates. It's like, that's absolutely, you don't know me if you think that, right? I don't hate anyone, but I hate sin, and I hate devastation to this country and to individuals, and especially to children, right? So the stuff that we've even talked about, if you're in a situation where you've made a decision about an unborn child, there's so much love and forgiveness on this side of any Christian that's doing it the correct way. So there's no judgment whatsoever at all, except against the sin, but not against the person, right? So what I've said many times this week is, like, if somebody says that, you have my permission to correct them and say, Jimmy Graham doesn't hate anyone, right? And I believe that a Christian man or woman shouldn't hate anyone. And if they've been, if Christianity has been misrepresented by a person that basically read you the riot act and said they hate you because of it, they were doing it wrong. It's never been God. It's always been people. I know so many people that have been harmed by the church, right? And it was never the church as a whole. It was never God. It was probably some idiot that messed up, right? And they get grace too. So I just want to be crystal clear about that, is that we don't push hate here. We don't tolerate it. We don't do any of that. As my pastor says, you want to find a battle? 216. There's 2 genders, 1 race, and the earth was created in 6 literal days. Just say that loud enough, the fights will come to you, right? And they have. Bring it on. Like, when you found it on truth, I don't hang my head anywhere, not talking to anybody. And when people say, hey, I'd appreciate it if you don't do this anymore, I say, not only is the answer no, I'm just getting started, right? Because somebody's got to stand, and I say this quite a bit. We say this. Everybody wants a good man to stand until they do. Then they want to critique how you do it, knowing they themselves couldn't stand. Okay, you can have your opinion, but I'm not asking permission. So this is what we're doing, right? And please join us, prayerfully consider it, pray, and find what God wants you to do. But being seated is just not even a thing anymore if you're a protector, if you're serious about it.
Well said.
Good, brother? All right, man. On that, recommending it. Please watch Nefarious. I've heard the guard your heart, right? And if truly this is going to, bother you, but I don't think it's what you think it is, but some people need to, and other people, especially if they're a protector, they claim to be that person that would go in harm's way for others. Watch it. Not guard your heart. Keep your heart strong enough that you can face these things. Because if you can't look at them, you can't face them, and then there's nobody left. So somebody's got to do it, and that person just might be you. And that part, when we've done these things locally, I've seen it, that it goes over very well, and people just needed a little push, and now they're hungry because it ticked them off enough to say that I can't see that and keep doing what I'm doing, and their life changes. So I think that's by design. So I'd say enjoy it, but it's not enjoyable. But challenge yourself to watch it, to think about it, to pray about it, to get in your Bible and challenge it. And until we see you again, God bless each and every one of you. We truly love you, and we hate no one. Take care of one another. Like us at ableshepherd.com to learn more about the community plus capability.
And make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes. Friend me on my personal page on Facebook under Jimmy Graham.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, please click the button to follow us, get notifications, like, subscribe, do all of that, so we can make sure to get the message out to you.
Amen. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.